Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and welcome to today's session titled Capacity in Public Administration for or Through AI. My name is ธนาพร a lecturer of Graduate School of Public Administration, NIDA, and I am delighted to be your MC today. And let me also thank the Tallinn University of Technology for supporting this public administration dialogue. As we stand at the intersection of innovation and governance, AI is no longer a distant concept. It is actually reshaping the landscape of public administration. But the question remains, are we building capacity in the public administration for AI, like governing or regulating it, or are we building capacity through AI, using it to enhance decision-making, service delivery, and policy implementation? Today, we aim to unpack this duality with the expert insights, forward-looking perspectives. It is my pleasure to introduce our distinguished Professor Dr. Wolfgang Drechsler. He is the Professor of Governance at the Regno Departments of of Innovation and Governance at Tallinn University of Technology and Associate at Harvard University Davis Center. He is Honorary Professor at the UCL Institute for Innovation for Public Purpose. And today he will guide us through this critical and timely topic. Please give him a warm welcome, please.
This one. Yeah, thank you very much, Prof. Tanapan, for this kind introduction, and thank you all for being here this afternoon. Saturday afternoon is always a challenge and an investment, but for me it's always a pleasure, an honor, and a privilege to be back at NIDA, which, as I saw, I have been doing now since a dozen years, 12, so quite auspicious as far as the numerology is concerned. And this is really what in public administration we would call an agile lecture, because we, Prof. Tanapan and I only agreed on this lecture on Wednesday, because I was supposed to teach a non-Western PA class tomorrow for the graduate school for monks in Phnom Penh, but as you might know, travel for whatever purposes between Thailand and Cambodia right now is not what you would call particularly appropriate or auspicious. And so I had this space, which was meant, it's like in the middle of my holidays, but there is a space of work, and this fell flat. And so to move into the void, into the emptiness, we agreed that it might be a nice idea if I'm here anyway to do something at NIDA. And so since I'm actually working just like you this Saturday afternoon, we were talking about what would be a nice lecture for this class. And we came up with this subject. Now, and for me anyway, it's not a hard work. If you become a university professor, partially that's because you like to listen to yourself speak. Yeah, I mean, for me, to now talk to you about that here in Bangkok is not a problem at all. It's very close to a leisure entertainment, and therefore I'm happy to do it. The class format that we have is this is a class for PhD students, although the MPA students are in the majority. And it is in the context of a human resources class. Yeah? So what that means for me is, first of all, the aspect of public administration we need to look at this afternoon, HR in public administration is basically the civil service. That means people working for, in, and with the public sector in an orderly and full-time capacity. There is also co-production and so on, but this is how I would start. That means, what does it mean for people in the public service? And then for PhD students, what that means is we somehow need to theorize, we somehow need to conceptualize. The idea of the PhD is to put things into a mental framework and to understand things by creating a logical context through which I understand the wiser things. It's not the how-to thing. You could get away, I know that at a top school like NIDA that's not the case, to do MPA studies just by solving little things. Yeah? But the claim for the PhD is to try to conceptualize a little bit more. And that is a challenge in the topic field we are talking about, AI, because it's such a fluent thing. It's really happening right now. Prof. Thanaporn is of course right that it has arrived, but most people haven't fully understood what it is, and it is really changing, not by the half year, but by the month of what is possible. So to try to conceptualize will be a temporary work, and still we need to try to do this in order to understand it a little bit more. And so both from the context of public administration as a scholarly discipline and from a field we call science and technology studies or technology and society that always talks about large-scale technological change, we can derive insights of how to cope with AI, because one of the most fascinating things for me, if I look at AI in the public sector and outside, is that there is this mixture that people are really shocked and afraid by it because they think it will ruin the world which we know. But on the other hand, also really excited because it seems that if you have specialized knowledge about AI, you will be getting ahead and maybe getting better career opportunities or more money, both of which AI is not a discipline that lends itself towards exclusivity, so it's relatively unlikely. And if this is the case, the problem right now, it seems to be, to me, and in this maybe I'm a little bit elitist, is that everybody is talking about AI, but this talking about AI from people like me who stand in offices of classes like that does not imply that they have the slightest idea of what they're talking about. Because if something is fashionable and something is really exciting, everybody talks about it without necessarily very profound knowledge. And this is why this kind of structuring is so important in this field, I think. Whether I am a particularly good person to talk about this or not is another question. So, but one of the things that I think speaks a little bit in my favor of you wasting your Saturday afternoon and listening to me rather than to watching something good on YouTube or Flix. Anyway, everybody has finished Squid Game 3 already, so it's not that much of a problem. But is that in technology and society in our class, I've personally been dealing with AI in the public sector for 8 years now. And for AI writing text since 8 years. Then it wasn't so popular anymore. Normally we say that it got normalized in the year 2020 and became really mainstream in 2022. But in reality, we had AI writing essays in PA already in 2017. Yeah, it's much older. So I always say that the longer your track record of dealing with AI in the public sector is, the less you are pushed by fashion. And therefore, that is also a check about the capacity you can make. What does for versus through mean in this context? Prof. Thanaporn already explained it, capacity for AI or through AI. But to repeat this again, this seems to me already a structuring way of talking about this, because basically you have a more critical attitude towards AI that sees it more as something we need to cope with, and on the other hand, the exciting part, we need to push this. Yeah? And this is a basic, very often worldview founded approach towards AI, and so the first thing is, indeed, I mean, you've explained it very well. Capacity for AI means I am, as a civil servant, on top of the AI topic. I know what it is. I can more or less judge it. I don't need to be a coder. I don't need to buy an OpenAI insider, but I need to basically understand what is going on. And that is usually what is required for us in the public sector, but also in neighboring disciplines. And so it's the capacity to judge, the capacity to regulate, it's the capacity to cope with AI. And to give you an example here, in most good MPA curricula, you will have a class on accounting. But you will never be an accountant. Accountants are accountant, not you. Why do you have an accounting class in PA? That is, if you don't really know accounting, the accountants will pull you over the table and do with you whatever you want. If you cannot read budget statements in the way that accountants do it, you don't have the capacity to deal with this. So you don't learn it to do the job, but you do learn it in order to understand it and to not be tricked into things. And that is the same with AI. This is what capacity for AI in the end stands for, that I can intelligently deal with it. Whereas capacity through AI is the more technical way of saying, okay, AI enables me to, for instance, in a city office have a chatbot for citizens to interact with. I don't write reports anymore because nobody really writes reports, likes to write reports, and therefore I give it to AI. I learn how to prompt. Yeah? So this idea that I learn how to prompt to get texts that I want, because in the end, and this is something we will very soon talk about, one of the key allures of AI is that in our society, we all need to produce texts we actually don't want to produce. The problem is, once, from the critical perspective, once we move from using AI to produce texts we don't want to produce, to producing texts we do actually want to produce. Nobody in academia likes to write summaries. Even if you write a scholarly article, nobody wants to write an abstract. So AI can do that very well. Almost nobody has a problem with that. The problem starts once you get AI to write the actual text. And the ultimate is when you ask AI to write a love poem. Yeah, please write a love poem. I mean, then you lose absolutely everything. Why are you in this business at all? It's a part of self-realization, right? So this is the for versus through thing. And then, why do we deal with this? There is this thing, I'm sure you've noticed that when things get too fashionable at some point, and the more close, some of the MPA students might still remember that, the more close you get to the Gen Z, to the really young generation, the faster you get tired of fashion. And right now, there is a famous statement by Yogi Berra that a certain restaurant, he says, nobody goes there anymore, it's too popular. Which is, of course, a joke. If it's too popular, it's too full, it means everybody goes, but not really cool people. For cool people, if something is done by everybody, it loses interest. So I have actually seen that in AI, we already reached a level where people get bored by talking about AI because everybody does it all the time. But that is arguably an impulse we in PA cannot afford. It's too important, a large-scale techno-societal shift that we can say, oh no, AI again, you know? That's not good. That's not good at all. So, in fact, if you ask people, what are the pressing questions of our time? The logical answer, normally I would now do a little Socratic exercise. I would ask you, what do you think are them? But because I have this one slide table of contents thing here, you see already what. It's pretty much the consensus. It's artificial intelligence. It's the American takeover by Trump and Musk, especially in PA, a large-scale realization of a destruction of the functioning state, yeah? An end of the bureaucracy, Doge, which is now more or less over, but partially this attitude that all of a sudden the public sector is the enemy and science is not an interesting thing to pursue. That for PA, public administration, which is a scholarly field that was led by American universities and American scholars, American journals and according to American logic, and all of a sudden the US is out of this game, is something that seems to be very startling and with which the PA profession struggles as much as with AI. A small footnote here, we were recently discussing this on Wednesday. If you are a really good PA scholar, you will be not very surprised by the changes in the United States, because a system in which all of a sudden civil servants are judged for loyalty, not for competence, so that loyalty is more important than competence. We have had that also in classic Western PA, only we had that last time in the 17th century. So what basically happens in the US now is they are moving back to the 17th, not to the 18th century. But that is a normal thing. Sultanic regimes, the great Max Weber calls it. That is what we have back here. And the third, which still doesn't go away in spite of the ongoing, is the sustainability, ecology, and the green transition project. Now, what is very important here is that, again, in the US, this is off the agenda, officially speaking, but it is on the NIDA model, right? Wisdom for sustainability after the change thing. If we mostly deal, as we do, with AI and with Trump Musk, now Trump, what it of course means is that the sustainability question goes to the background. All of a sudden it's not interesting anymore. But if the challenges are true, that our planet is being driven against the wall and we need to do something against that, that is a serious problem. So some people deal with the question of whether we can have AI for sustainability. This is a very chic topic. But in the end, the AI focus puts sustainability towards the back. Although not everywhere. Just as a very recent example, Prof. Tanapon and I were exactly half a year ago in India for the main global PA conference in Delhi. And IAS as this is called, and there is one by the Administrative Staff College in India later this month. And the Indian focus, for instance, of PA and civil service reform is still fully on sustainability. So this is the main thing they have. Now you could say, okay, India, is that really world leading? Well, but it's the most people. India, my first professorship is in Estonian, at an Estonian university, although I myself an ethnic German. And Estonia has 1.3 million citizens. The state railways of India alone have 1.3 million civil servants. Yeah, that shows you the dimensions. So India is so huge that if India is still pursuing sustainability as its main goal, it means it does stay on the agenda. But still, this means what we have to deal with. Now, point 4, we are getting already at, and that is, for various reasons, our field, public administration, which we deal with in our degrees, is not a side area of AI, but it's a central area of AI. In the public imagination, in which bureaucracy is very often perceived as something negative rather than empowering, it seems that AI can lead to civil service reduction, to less bureaucracy, to the image of chatbots which are friendlier to you than bureaucrats, and so on and so on. And it is the regulation of AI in the end is the task of the bureaucracy. So our field is not a side field to AI, but a central field to AI. This is juxtaposed by what I mentioned before, that unfortunately the intellectual capacity of PA scholars to deal with AI is not particularly high. So we have a mismatch here in that the understanding of AI in public administration by PA scholars is not super. Other people can do this better. We have to admit that, you know? This disconnect is something in which we need to go into and with which we kind of need to cope. So this is the landscape as I see it at the moment. Now, one of the most striking features right now in the public discourse is that, and I now mean both the civil service and American, but also global and other academe, is the claim that if we don't cope with and understand AI now, we will lose. We must do this now. There is no time to think. Let's do this. You are losing. And you know, I do read Thai news on social media, and I do read 3 Thai newspapers on social media in a more or less regular way. So I do get an idea of the public discourse and also the various lecture and conference announcements. And that is something that you have here in Thailand just as much as everywhere else. So in that sense, Thailand is very mainstream, but there are people in AI who say, quit worrying, don't was, you must embrace AI now. You will get your typical expat Australian CEO at some Bangkok Post symposium in Central World saying, all the jobs will be changed by AI, and your job, if you're not up with AI tomorrow, you will be fired because this world will be, you know, and you get these kind of urgency things. And it is a typical model of a hype. Now, what is very, very important here is if you call this urgency that is created in AI a hype, the people who are for AI say, oh, he's just one of these traditional guys. He's not with the technology, or he's too old. The man is already 24 years old. You know, basically some retired lung type, you know, never mind, you know, let him sit back and have their craft coffee, but not bother us who are the dynamic AI guys, and so on. You know, this kind of rhetoric, which you always get in technological change. Now, what is really important here to say, and this is what we can learn from science and technology studies in PA, and it happened every time we had a new technology, is that those people interested in pushing the technology through because they are invested in it, both mentally and financially, try to push you into this field, but without thinking. But what is very important is that if you call something a hype, doesn't mean it's unimportant. Yeah? So what I'm saying is what hype does is you take something truly important, but you overpush it. And from a general technology and society perspective, I would argue what we see in the first days of August 2025, that means right now, is that indeed the technological transition and how it will affect the public sector of AI is incredibly important, but it's not that important as the AI pushers make it out to be. So the hype is real, but it's overhyped. Yeah? That, I think, is a very important thing to say. This now, to be very clear, is my judgment, so it may be totally wrong. But on the other hand, that you have this created urgency, you must get into AI now. You're not allowed to think, you need to move. That is a classical mechanism we see with all technological change, like this. I was told, this is the slide I did, and this slide is actually the table of contents. It's actually not so much for you, it's for me, that I remember what I want to talk about. This is how academics use slideshows, so that I can just talk freely to you, but it's not fully freely because that reminds me. But it's better if I look at my mobile phone all the time. It doesn't look good on camera, so I have this slide. However, when I came in here, I was informed by our brilliant support staff that this is not nice to see. And this purple on gold, you know, I thought, you know, purple is the Saturday color. So, yeah, I'm thinking, you know, And so with the gold, this is nice, but I was told you cannot see it very well, so they prepared another. And since now I want you to see something, this is, now this does not have the planetary color of Saturday, but it should be easier to read. So let's switch to this. You invest so much aesthetic energy. Okay, never mind. People always say, innovate, don't imitate, right? Almost nobody innovates. Most people imitate an innovation from somewhere else. An innovation that is truly new is extremely rare. And normally, if you're not the top innovator, it is not that much of a problem. You do have the time in technology. One of the biggest stories that is told on technology, you might have heard it, is when cars were introduced. Yeah? So, you know, I mean, I'm talking about when cars entered the general driving, but weren't so much. So when King Rama V went to Bad Homburg, saw the nice limousines, got one, and so on, but then introduced it into a system where there were no cars, and it shocked the horses. And then there was, in some countries, a law that if you drive a car, somebody needs to walk in front of you with a red flag to make people attentive that there is a car coming. And very often in science and technology studies, this is told as a joke. If you are saying, let's be careful about the implementation of technology, should you really have somebody with a red flag walking in front of a car? It's like a joke. But in reality, is it a joke? If you do introduce a car into a horse setting, people will die, not only chicken in the village. And if the chicken dies, you can make still some nice Hainanese chicken rice. But people will die. It sounds absurd, but the red flag in front of the car for the transition period was not that bad an idea. And do we have less cars today in countries in which you had a careful introduction of cars? No, we don't. There's no connection to this. Car implementation is not related to car implementation caution. Yeah? So this threat, if you don't do AI tomorrow, you will lose your job, you have no bank account anymore, you cannot afford any sneakers anymore, you cannot go on holidays, you are dead if you don't do it now. This super hype. This has no foundation in technology and society studies. It's a threat. In fact, and I don't want to go too much into the details, I have written an essay about it in 2016. It's what in technology and society studies we call the katechon. The katechon is a very weird religious metaphor. It's a person in the Christian Bible that appears towards the end of time when the great Satan, the devil, takes over the world. And the katechon is somebody who stops you for a while to prevent the catastrophe. This is what meant by katechon. So with this difficult word, we designate holding up change for a while because the change might be worse than what it's supposed to heal. And this giving space, which very often an institution in our societies do that is very conservative and that is not friendly towards new technologies, gives us this time. Can you think about what kind of institution usually stops the implementation of new technologies? It's law. And the reason is that lawyers are very conservative as a type. And second, that law is always based on the last technology, not on the new technology. Yeah? If you write a law, you write it based on the old system. So judges very often say, you cannot do this now, and therefore create, say, half a year or a year of thinking time about the new technology. And in this, we can, in good political systems, negotiate how we want to have things play out. Now, cui bono is a Latin phrase, and it's cui bono means whom does it benefit? If you see a mystery like a crime show on TV, very often the cui bono question, this is one of the first questions you have if you see a crime, especially a murder. So there is a corpse, and then the standard question is cui bono, who profited from that? Because basically, normally murders, generally murders are for two reasons, money or passion. So it's either a love or jealousy thing, somebody cheated on you and then you kill somebody. And the second is about money. Actually, money is what it's most. So if you find out who profits from a murder, you know who it was. Now, who profits from the AI hype? Indeed, it is the big billionaires behind the AI boom who have a very clear political, social agenda to push this through. And who, I think, this is a scientific lecture, so I shouldn't be too political. I already was about Trump, but let me say that again. If you look at the AI billionaires, this is a gallery of not particularly nice people. Yeah? If you look at these guys, this is not, if they say, cross the bridge now, you probably wouldn't go because they are very untrustworthy. I mean, Peter Thiel or the guys from the social media or from OpenAI, these are not people you would normally trust. If they tell you, this is what AI will do next year, it means they will make another billion if you listen to them. It doesn't mean it's true. So far, all the AI predictions have been very, very shaky. So if you ask the cui bono question, the people who push you, the top people, into AI are people who make billions more if you listen to them. That would, for normal people, mean be cautious. And the third one, again, comes from a metaphor, sign here. Now here again, we're using in the AI discourse Western metaphors, not metaphors from the Thai or Asian contexts or something like that, but there are similar stories. If you see in a TV thing, somebody says, this contract is really good for you, and you have to sign here, but you have to sign now, because if you don't sign now, all the opportunity goes away. You now get 20% interest, but sign here now, sign immediately. It's always a scam. It's always a scam. In the Western tradition, the person who wants you to sign a contract about your soul and your blood, it's always the devil. In the Western fairy tales, the devil wants you to sign a contract quickly. Why? Because if you think about it, you might realize the contract is bad for you. So in other words, what you're usually taught, it's part of general education, is if somebody hurries you to sign a contract without reading, what do? You say, stop, give me a minute, now I will read extra carefully, because I'm sure there is some paragraph in this contract that is against me. Yeah? Or, this is the real important thing here. Now, there is a societal benefit in creating space of not implementing technology right away. There is a problem with the people who push a technology because it is in their material interest. And finally, people who hurry you to buy into a system are very often very cheesy. Yeah? So if this is the case, very, very importantly, what this point 5 and point 6 argue for is not at all that AI is not super important. It is. It is not arguing that you shouldn't use AI. You should. It is not arguing that the hype is fake. What it is arguing is it is so important and so big that when people say, I don't have the time to think about it, the opposite is true. As far as AI is concerned, we cannot afford not to think about it. So the reflection in places like NIDA is so important. Not the hurrying into and doing it quickly, but to consider what up. Because in the context of technology, and exactly because it's so powerful, this is the way. So what in the end you really want, and here we come already to the second part, is what I would be arguing for is maximum understanding of AI on our part. So we want, as public administration scholars or civil servants, understand what AI does, how it does it, and what that means as much as possible. At one point, Sam Altman, the OpenAI founder, said, in the future, I think nobody should understand how AI works. We just go to the interface, we put it in, we don't need to know how it works. Like, if I drive a car, I don't need to know how a car works. Yeah, I just sit there and I ignite the key and then I drive, right? Unless I'm on Rama 4 and it's Friday afternoon, then I don't drive, I just stand there, but you know, in principle. Yeah? That, I think, is very clear because of the importance is the exact wrong attitude. The more we know about any detail of AI, the better. The time we take, if we are hurried, this is what gives us the capacity to evaluate what there is to be done, and that is the crucial thing to manage AI well. So if there is a moment in which the choice is quickly but with no knowledge, or take a few minutes and think, number 2 is the right answer for the PA perspective. And I will almost at the very end come back to this point. So this is my main message for today. Think about it. Maximal understanding should be our motto in our field of how to deal with AI. And then you can go and play with this. And I only have a few minutes left, as I thought. And so I will just go through these examples very, very quickly. The thing is that in the end, when people talk about AI, and especially generative AI, what we are still talking about is an approach based on big data. That means I look at a lot of information that is very similar, and from there I predict what will be in the future. Oh, you're already getting ready for the Q&A? Very good. AI texts started with the American reporting of soccer games on weekend afternoons. I'm not sure whether you knew that, but the first texts written by AI were for soccer games, Little League. Why? If you're a sports journalist, you don't want to describe village soccer games, but the parents of the little players want to read it. So you need to produce a text. What is the specifics about soccer? Soccer is always the same. Soccer is always the same. It's always the same story. Recently, somebody told me a soccer game is exactly like one of these Thai boys love series. It's always the same story, just told with slightly different people, just the other way around. You know, it's always the same situation. So if you know who is who and who has what number, you have the data from a game, everybody can spin it together. Second, weather reports. Weather reports were second. If you have the data of the temperature, a table, weather, it's always the same. What is happening? It's either warm or not, and it rains or not, you know? It's not a big deal. So the texts, once you have 4,000 weather reports about weather in Bangkok, you can write the 4,001st very easily, because it's just another reconfiguration. And so these were the second texts written by what we now call AI. And the third one was quarterly reports. American firms need to write a text 4 times a year about the previous 3 months' economic activity. But in the end, that's really just a table. How much did you make? How much did you not make? How many people? How many did you fire? What did you do? You don't need a text, but it's always the same. But by law, you have to write this text that nobody wants to write, nobody wants to read. So this is how you moved into AI, and that is in principle what AI still is if we are talking about text generation. Most Gen Z people do not primarily use AI, large language models, for text generation. They use it for what? Personal life advice. Yeah? I now have to spend this holiday with my family. I don't know how to behave because I hate my uncle. What do I do? The number one reason that younger people use AI is for life advice, not for texts. That has totally changed. And so AI will know a lot of you, but still it is premised on the collection of other things. And it does so in a quantitative and numerical way. That is the foundation of AI, of course. I will not go at length into this example. I was in November actually at a conference just with a paper just on the topic of Buddhism and AI. And the usual argument is here that what makes Buddhism of all religions special is a real focus on reality, to say that the life that we see here is not real, but that the real life is behind it. The problem is the AI world creates another mirror of the reality that we see, and so it distances us even further because of its quantitative organization. So it mirrors an image and gets us further away from reality. But that's a really far thing. And I will skip number 10 because I just babbled so much that I have no time about that. That is just the third illustration. That's not important at that point. But choice and duty. Who watches the watchman? This is a good way for me to end because it links to what I've said before as far as PA is concerned. The use of AI, as important as it is, still requires some judgment right now, even of whether the things are correct. AI is still fantasizing. It's getting better and better, but you still need to check. But what does it mean if you need to check? Namely, if we even say the main job for the civil servant is to check the results of AI, then what do you need to have? A, you need the competence about the area, and B, you need to understand AI well enough to make this judgment. In other ways, you need this capacity. Will this ever go away? Will we get an AI that is smart enough to make these judgments for us? But that's, again, a question. Somebody needs to answer that question. So even if we say AI can do this, who is judging AI that it can do this? So whenever you make a judgment about judgment, can somebody make the judgment? Somebody needs to do that. You just go one step further back, and then again, somebody needs to evaluate whether that is okay. In philosophy, this is a problem that was geared up by Plato, the Greek philosopher Plato, and it is generally called the who watches the watchman question. You know, watchmen are like guards that stand guard, say, of a village, but then who controls the guards? The guards might make a little revolution, or they might take money from the enemy, or whatever, right? So somebody needs to check them. But then who checks the ones who check the checkers? So there is an infinite regress in human society about that. And in the end, what it needs to be is capacity-based judgment. So even if we think about the optimal generation of generative AI, we still need people who make an ultimate judgment of whether that works or not, with area knowledge and AI capacity to understand. And who is this? With all arrogance, that's us. That's us in PA, the PA scholars and the PA actors. This is where I'm getting at. So where do we go from here? What do we do? What do we do on AI? Understand that AI is really important and it really will make big changes, but it is not that super intelligent and that powerful as those with a personal interest of hyping AI want us to believe, because they have a personal interest in the pushiness. So what we should do is to use AI with PA in mind as much as we can, while retaining a critical capacity of whether that really serves the goals we have. Does it really promote the kind of society, the kind of living together, the kind of efficiency and effectiveness that we really want? And for this, we need to get all the area knowledge about the fields in which we are in, and all the AI knowledge, including not only using the prompts. That's not good enough for us. We're in the public sector. Prompting is not enough. We should try to understand how the algorithms work as much as we possibly can. And if the big AI kings tell us, oh, we don't know also how it works, we should say, whoa, you don't know how this works? Not good, yeah, not good. Let's try to get as informed as we can, and on the basis of that knowledge, deal with it for the social benefit as much as we can. I think that is the challenge for public administration today as far as AI is concerned. Okay, thank you so much for your attention and looking forward to some questions.
Okay. Thank you very much for your insightful presentation. And now we are open for questions. Any? Okay.
Oh.
Thank you so much, Professor Wolfgang, for this wonderful presentation. There is a lot to take home from here, but unfortunately, it seems like we don't have enough time. This was actually too short for me. I don't know about my colleagues here, right?
Now we have 15 minutes.
Yes, and I think 15 minutes is actually a disservice to a topic like this, you know, but anyway, so I have a couple of questions here from your presentation. It was actually well detailed from the definition of the concepts of AI for and through, where you stated that for is the capacity to judge, regulate, and also to cope with, and also for through, which has to do with the technical aspect of AI, especially looking at the prompting side, right? But the question is about generative AI, right? That seems to be because you also talked about the hype. It seems that the hype is leaning much towards the generative aspect, and that's kind of blind a whole lot of people about what other aspects AI is really being used for us in the academic sector and young upcoming researchers, right? We are also focused on the generative aspect of AI, all right? I want you to throw more light on how we can practically utilize the generative aspect in research for the upcoming researchers in PA. Also, another question borders on who controls AI, the AI development, innovation. Would it be proper to say that government should be at the forefront of AI controlling, and if that would be the case, what are we doing about it? Do we have any practical examples of maybe countries or, actually making specific rules and, regulations on how AI should be developed, innovated, and used, and all of that? So I have some other questions, but if you can take this, that would be nice. Thank you.
So given the limited time to which you rightly write, and by the way, we already extended that. The original plan was to be even shorter, half an hour and stuff like that. So the first thing is, generative AI is mostly not real. It's just a hype thing. What generative AI says is we are moving beyond using things from historical analysis, like the 3 examples I gave you, and something new will be created. But as far as I see nothing new being created. That is a plan, but in reality, that is what I tried to say, and I'm sorry if I didn't emphasize it well enough, but what I tried to say is that almost all generative AI today is just normal AI. And normal AI is basically big data. That means I develop patterns based on a large data set and therefore predict what is the most likely outcome for the future. This AI, because of calculator capacities, can do better than any other previous thing. And so this kind of research becomes obsolete. Second question, how should young and upcoming researchers use AI? Well, partially this was in the William Morris answer, which I skipped because I myself talked too much. But I think that history shows us that for the handmade, the craftsmanship, the organic, the natural, there is always a space. So those people who want to stay out of AI, I think can stay out of AI. But for most, this is very difficult to do because indeed you go against the technical trend. Is it really possible to live without a smartphone? Theoretically, yes. Practically, can you? Can you even switch it off? What happens if it rings? Can you say, I'm not checking? No, you can't, right? So we are, I mean, half of the people here are even checking their smartphones right now, let alone not having it in front of them. That, like you guys, even not having it in their hands, that's already an anti-technological attitude. I mean, this is how it will be with AI as well. That means there is this necessity to deal with this for sure. But that said, I think the differentiation between doing things with AI you don't want to do, but reserving what you do want to do for doing it without AI or with AI only as a technical tool, but not with generating stuff for you, is important. Talking about gyms, we talked about gyms earlier in some context, and the NIDA gym and other things like that. You can have a machine that does your gym exercise, your pulling and your lifts for you, and you get your marks. But your body won't be helped. The same with your brain. If you are not interested in thinking, what the hell are you doing in an academic field? If you don't want to think about something, if you want to outsource it for AI, the point is not to have an article or an output, but how you get there. And if you don't have a joy with thinking, and if you don't like your brain to work as a muscle and train it, yeah, well, then maybe you should do something else with your life. It's not particularly pretty. And soon AI will make this better. I have written in the Philippine Journal of PA, again, for well over than half a decade ago, that bad PA essays can be written by algorithms. Because it's always the same, this kind of empirical stuff. Not a problem. But why would you do this? The answer partially here is a bad logic of academe that pushes us into performance indicators that can be better done by AI. The simple corrective here is to adjust the performance educators towards true thinking and true knowledge generation, which is non-AI, while preserving the use of AI where it is technically feasible, for instance, to get through a large data set or do bibliographical research, as long as this works. So again, it's very important not to be too negative about AI, but to retain the critical capacity to evaluate what AI does. That's what I would say here. But as far as the articles is concerned, once again, abstract and conclusions is more easily done by AI. But if you leave the substance to AI rather than research to the AI, what are you doing? Aren't you making yourself obsolete? And what is then the point of it all? And what does that mean for capacity generation for those who need to judge the results of AI? That would be my point in the early August of 2025.
The last question.
Yeah.
The third question is who controls?
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yes.
Very rich people who own the big AI companies. That is what it is right now. And they are politically so important that they are more powerful than governments who regulate it. Although what was quite interesting to see in the US, that it seems that political power may actually trump financial power after all. But altogether, they are really pushing it. In general, political capacity to regulate AI is very reactive right now. And the problem, of course, is that on a technical level, those who allow AI to be pushed through are more successful in the short run than those who regulate. But that's the issue right now. But I would say these aforementioned billionaires, they are controlling how AI is developed.
Any more questions? Any questions?
No, not so fast. Give people some space.
You want to ask? Okay, so sorry. Yeah, the last one, right?
You already said, okay.
Yeah, it's okay. You know, you mentioned before about the idea of PA and AI being like, would we say that AI is antithesis to public administration, right? I was actually looking at if there are practical ways, you know, we can use AI not just in public administration, right? In social sciences at large, right? Because when we talk about this AI and all of this generative AI, you know, it looks like that's where the academics come in. But the real changing the world, which is what I believe we do also in PA, right? How do we actually maximize or optimize AI in the aspect of what we do as PA people, all right? It's still hazy, like it's still not clear what where we come in as PA experts or PA people, all right, in using AI in changing the world. Can you throw more light on that, please? Thank you.
Well, I mean, the first thing is to say, if we look at the world today, don't use change. This is sometimes the thing with the NIDA model, with the implication that change will lead to improvement. Right now, we are seeing a lot of change that leads to getting things worse. Yeah, that's the first. Change is not good as such. Change is only good if it improves things. That's the first. And the second thing is, no, I think we know very well what we should be doing in PA with AI. That means having the capacity to understand and then to use it to those goals that we have socially and institutionally agreed we should pursue. That depends from society to society. But this is this idea. We need to manage. Yeah? And in order to manage, we need to know what is happening and what's going on, both in AI and as far as the general goals is concerned. Now, that may sound very process-oriented, but so much we can say right now. We cannot assume that the unconsidered use of AI in simple interofficial moves or talking with the citizens will automatically be a good thing. But once I have the capacity to know how to use it, I can also react to the changes that occur. This is what I would say here.
Thank you.
Any questions? No.
Let me, are we finished then?
Nearly. Depends. Yeah.
Yeah. So here I can, just to conclude, I will bring a Thai example, and actually an example from Bangkok, which is not so often topicalized in Bangkok. In Bangkok, we have a guardian deity of PA. Basically, it's not a Buddhist institution, but it's in a semi-Buddhist temple. It's in the city pillar shrine across, you know, next to the defense ministry and across the palace. There is the city pillar shrine, and there are 5 guardian deities. The 5th of one is the guardian deity of PA. Does anyone know him here? Have anybody been to the city pillar shrine recently? No. Anyway, the 5th one is Lord Chetakup, as he's called in Thai, who is the guardian deity of PA. You can't see him right now because he's under renovation. Yeah? And he is actually, he's borrowed from a Hindu tradition, but now fully part of the Thai tradition. In Hindu mythology, he's called Chittagupta, Lord Chittagupta, so Chetakup in Thai. And he has a notepad and a pencil. So he is the original guardian deity of PA in Thailand. And that means he's keeping a list. So it is the very essence of PA of keeping lists and records. Where does he keep lists for? Lord Chettercup is keeping lists on the lives of humans. So once they die, that the Lord of Death can really make the judgment of where somebody goes, how it looks with the rebirth, and so on and so on. So why I'm mentioning this is the super traditional, and you know, City Pillar Shrine, this is where the city starts, right? The very beginning to reflect on PA is keeping lists, but not only the simple keeping lists, but then preparing the judgment of it all. So it's the recording, it's the quantitative elements, but then the how to. How do I deal with this? How do I go on? And in what interest is for clear. And I do think this message of this guardian deity of PA still holds as strong as when the City Pillar Shrine was created. That means that on the one hand, the inventory, the stock, the lists are so important for us in PA, but it can never finish there. But in the end, what is required is judgment power. If we just count, if we just produce, but don't, as PA scholars or PA practitioners, have judgment power, all is for nothing. And that we can learn from and in Bangkok just as much as universally. Now to you.
Thank you very much, and lots of food for thought today. And my thought of today is AI our foe or our friends? What do you think?
That depends on us and if we let
Yeah.
it to be. But I do agree with those people who say we are not asked whether we want AI or not. AI is here and we need to deal with this. But that it is dealt with in the public interest is not about hurrying and implementing it quickly, but maximally understanding it and having the judgment power on the field and the technology to implement it in the public interest for the common good.
Right. All right. Thank you very much, Professor Wolfgang, for your invaluable contribution. And my key takeaway is to understand it, use it,
Yes.
and deal with it for the future. Right.
That is right. Thank you so
Thank
much for
you.
having me.
Thank you for
your
audience.
attention.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And see you next time. Bye.